Okay, we are live.
Please rise as you are able. I now call this meeting of City Council to order.
We acknowledge tonight that this meeting is taking place on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe people. The Anishinaabe include the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Please be seated. Welcome everyone to our virtual meeting of Barrie City Council. Of course, with the ongoing restrictions due to COVID-19, City Council is continuing to practice physical distancing. All of the councillors, the executive management team, and city clerk are participating via video conference tonight. Members of the senior leadership team that have items on the agenda are present but not visible on the screen, and of course they are available to answer any questions that members of council might have. The first item on the agenda is confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the City Council meeting held on September 21st, 2020 have been circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, minutes are adopted as printed and circulated. Okay, we do not have any awards and recognition items on the agenda tonight, reports from officers or deputations. So we will move right into the committee reports. Deputy Mayor Ward, I believe you have motions.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee Report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section A of the General Committee Report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted. These were the consent items from last week's agenda that consist of the Affordable Housing Water Service Upgrade Grant, surplusing of city-owned land at 72 King Street, a confidential potential litigation and solicitor-client privilege matter, barrier-free parking stall implementation, restrictions on the streets used for student driver training, an investigation into parking restrictions on Osprey Ridge, implementation of no parking restrictions on Moore Crescent, suspension of the parking restriction in the Allendale neighborhood, and an item regarding developing local talent in the arts sector and connecting local neighborhoods. These are the consent items. Are there any comments or questions on Section A? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of Section A, please indicate. And I'm sorry, I'm getting slow video feed here from some members. Madam Clerk, are you able to see all members of council?
No, I'm not able to see. I'm only able to see yourself. Everybody else's screens.
Yeah, we're experiencing some slow internet here. So I'm actually going to ask for, what I'm going to do is ask for all of those opposed to actually indicate verbally. If you are in favor, you don't, well, I'm going to say yay or nay. So all those in favor, I'm going to need you to unmute and say yay. And then if you are opposed, when I call for those opposed, please say no. Okay, so on section A, those in favor, please indicate.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
Are
Yay.
any, okay, are any opposed to section A? None opposed to section A. Okay, that carries. Apologies for this, but looks like the Zoom is a little slow, and we'll just make our way through as best we can here. Section B, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section B of the General Committee report dated September 28, 2020 be received.
Okay, it is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward and seconded by Councillor Thompson that section B of the General Committee report dated September 28th, 2020 be received. This is simply to receive the presentation concerning an introduction to the Economic and Creative Development Department, core services and goals. Those in favor, please say yay or yes.
Yay.
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 Are any opposed? None. That carries unanimously as well. Thank you. Section C, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section D of the General Committee report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. And members of council, I think what we'll do as we proceed here is if there are dissenting votes, then we'll just do a recorded vote. So section C is the sign bylaw revision on rail corridor signage. Comments, questions, or amendments? Councillor Riepma, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put the matter on the floor, and I have an amendment.
Go ahead.
The amendment is as follows. That motion moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Elwin. Motion 20-156 of section C of the General Committee report dated September the 28th, 2020, be amended by deleting paragraph 1 and replacing it with the following: that any new or replacement signage along the Barrie Collingwood Railway Corridor be considered by council on a site-by-site basis. And I'm happy to speak to that.
Okay, the amendment is moved by Councillor Riepma, seconded by Councillor Aylwin, that the paragraph 1 of the motion be replaced with that any new or replacement signage along the Barrie Collingwood Rail Corridor be considered by council on a site-by-site basis. Go ahead, Councillor Riepma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had quite a fulsome discussion about this last week, so I don't intend to reopen all of that. The purpose of this amendment is to basically accept alternative 2 that the staff put in their report when they reported to us last week. Make no mistake, I'm still opposed to billboards in this area, but I'm looking to find a middle ground here. I've read Ms. Schlichter's report, memo that she sent to us. I've also reread the Deloitte report, and I think that yes, we are short on money on this line to the tune of about $700,000. I'm delighted that we have a consultant coming on board very shortly that is going to give us some advice in terms of how to move forward on this. I'm expecting that we will, in due course, end up in a break-even situation here and be able to give our industries much needed support. This motion or this amendment gives us the opportunity to have a look at it. It does permit staff to go ahead with their proposal in terms of looking for new billboards, but it also gives us the opportunity to have a look at it before the contract is actually signed. So it seems to me that this gives us the best of both worlds, and I ask for your support on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Riepma. The amendment is on the floor. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to see members of council who wish to speak. Apparently, by the way, our webinar, or at least the webcast, is just fine. So it's just among us on the Zoom panel here that we appear to be having some freezing issues. So we're going to have to do this using audio. If you wish to speak to this, please indicate by saying yes. Do any members of council wish to speak to this?
Yes.
Councillor McCann, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I do have an issue with this, Councillor Ritma. I'm just reading a report that was sent out actually by Melanie in our media release. The city receives top spot for contributing to housing affordability. Barrie, Ontario, a new study released by the Building Industry and Land Development Association named the city of Barrie as an overall most effective, helpful, and cost-effective municipality across the Greater Toronto Area for getting new housing developments approved. And I know we're not talking about housing, we're talking about signage, but I do believe that they're related. I do believe that this is going to slow the machine down. And I listened very carefully to you last week, your issues. I didn't fully agree with most of them. And I think that we have to eventually trust our staff, right? And I think that it's not council's job to micromanage in this sine wave. And I just got to say that I trust our staff to make the right decision. If something's going to be an anomaly, then it's going to come to council, and staff know that. So I'm going to be voting no to your amendment, and I'd like council to support that.
Thanks, Councillor McCann. Are there others who wish to speak? Please say yes. Okay, I am not hearing anybody, so I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please say yes.
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 Those opposed?
No.
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 Okay,
No.
I'm going to have, yeah, I thought we might be close on that, so we're going to do a recorded vote. Madam Clerk, please conduct a recorded vote on the amendment.
Starting with you, Mayor Lehman.
Yes.
Councillor Rima,
Yes.
Councillor Elwin,
Yes.
Councillor Kungle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ward,
No.
Councillor Thompson,
No.
Councillor Natalie Harris,
No.
Councillor Harvey,
No.
Councillor Jim Harris,
No.
Councillor McCann,
No.
amendment loses.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. On the main motion, which is the original motion put on the floor from last week, any further comments? And I can now see all members of council, so we'll try and go back to the way we were doing things before. If you wish to speak, raise your card, and we will try and vote visually now as well. Anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question on the main motion that's on the floor. Those in favor, please indicate. I am as well in favor. Are those opposed? 2. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, members of council. Section D, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that Section D of the General Committee Report dated September 28th, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Section D of the General Committee Report dated September 28th, 2020 be adopted. This is the business plan status as at June 30th, 2020, our second quarter report for the entire organization. Are there any comments or questions on Section D? Just before I call the question then, I did want to say, although this matter was not discussed, I think that's largely because it was good news. Our executive management team have faced an incredibly difficult task managing all of the changes to our organization that have resulted from COVID, trying to contain our costs and pivot to deliver services in new ways. And compared to so many other cities, so many other municipalities out there, our fiscal situation is quite good under the circumstances. Now, that is everybody's got deficits, and we are likely faced with one. But I did not want to let this quarterly report go by without noting the extraordinary effort day after day of our executive management team and our senior management team, and in fact, our frontline staff to deliver services in a new way and still stay this close to the city's overall budget and manage within the fiscal capacity that our taxpayers give us. So thank you very much to staff. And with that, I'll call the question on section D. It is to be adopted. Those in favor of section D? I am as well. Any opposed? None. That carries. And thank you again to staff. Section E, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section E of the General Committee report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section E of the General Committee report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted. This is the request for a map of social service facilities. Comments, questions, or amendments? Councillor McCann, I've got one here, I think, from you. Unfortunately, the screen appears to be freezing again, but go ahead. You're on audio, Councillor McCann.
Is this the appropriate time to bring my amendment now?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. That motion 20G158 of section E of the General Committee report dated September 22nd, 2020 be amended to add the following locations to be included in the map request: hotels, schools, addiction-related services, mental health services, homeless shelters, group homes, daycares, job training facilities, and the disadvantaged youth services.
Okay, we have an amendment. It's moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Harvey, that motion 20G158 of section E of the General Committee report dated September 28th be amended to add the following locations to be included on the map: hotels, schools, addiction-related services, mental health services, homeless shelters, group homes, daycares, job training facilities, and disadvantaged youth services. Go ahead, Councillor McCann.
You know what? Nothing really to add unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, any comments on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll simply call the, oh, sorry.
Mayor Lehman.
Councillor Elwin. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'll ask the same question of staff that I did last week. Is this information readily available, and putting this map together, will it be labor intensive with these added categories?
Ms. Miller, I will direct that one to you.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Elwin. We have identified a resource and an existing online platform that we will be able to pull this information from. And we've estimated that it'll be about 4 days of additional staff time to add it to the map that we've already been preparing.
Okay, thank you. With that, I will be supporting. Again, more information is good. I think this amendment is a little bit redundant because the definition of social services facility under our zoning bylaw, which is already included in the motion, does include most of the listed items. But
Mover of the motion, I'm just, and maybe just because they are included in that, but I'm just curious, why do you want to know where hotels and schools? Like, I'm just not clear on, is there something that we don't know about where those hotels and schools are, or why are we asking for those to be included?
Well, through you, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Deputy Mayor Ward, you know, hotels, it may be a bit of a shooting star, but, you know, with COVID happening and us having some of the homeless put into hotels and motels, I think that it's not going to take much staff time to put those on the map, and they are being used right now for housing. That was really simply why I put the hotels in.
In schools?
And schools, it's just, you know, I mean, if you want the long answer, Deputy Mayor Ward, you know, quite simply, we are going to be a drastically changed city, right? And with the report coming out from the Barrie Police about 3-4 weeks ago, just stating that, you know, all the issues that we have that are throughout the city, not just amalgamated down in our downtown core. We've got a lot of different services that are coming to council that would like to be a part of Barrie. And I just think more information right now is prudent. I think that this has got to be a strong foundation for a guiding document that anytime we have social services come into our downtown, that we're able to very quickly see where all the services are and make sure they're not clumped together and clustered together. So it's just more of a fact-finding mission, and this documentation, including schools, including hotels, I believe is not going to be a great resource, to the city staff.
Yeah, I had a question about maybe for staff about the group homes, including, do we know where all the group homes are? They have any kind of license or something that we actually know where group homes are located? Because I know as a right, they're allowed to go into almost every area of the city. So whoever on staff can answer that.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor Lehman to Deputy Mayor Ward. For the most part, we do, and we feel we will be able to identify those on the map to the best of our ability.
Okay, and I do have a bit of concern about the group homes. I'm not sure whether, certainly neighbors know when they're living beside a group home. I'm not sure the rest of Barrie has to know that where a group home is located. I mean, these are group homes for maybe Canadian Mental Health Association, which I have one near me. There might be group homes for troubled teens. It could be group homes for other things. I'm not sure if I want to put them on a map if they're not on a map already. If that information isn't readily accessible to somebody, I'm not sure I want it on a map. And it makes me a little uneasy to say we're going to have a map with all the group homes in Barrie. People know where they are. I mean, it's going to capture all the group homes for groups besides maybe what we're thinking of here. So I don't know if staff can respond to that or the move for the motion to respond. Do they have any concerns about putting group homes on this map?
Well, if you want me to
I'll go to Ms.
Sure.
Sure, Councillor McCann, you go ahead, and then I'll go to staff.
Sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry, Mayor Lehman. I apologize. Yeah, I'll go second.
Okay, Ms. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman to Deputy Mayor Ward, it is not something that we generally map or publicize, but it's not confidential information.
Maybe I can hear from Councillor McCann if he has any concerns about putting, for example, a group home for teens, putting it on a map so that people in Barrie know where it is.
Yeah, and I'm holding pretty strong here, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to have a map to know exactly where all these services are. So when we do have other services coming into our city, wanting to have our city, we have a council. I'll speak personally, have a very clear understanding of where everything is so I can make the best decision possible. And I believe that this will be a valuable resource for every single council member.
I wonder if before we actually publish this map, we could actually contact some of the people that have group homes and ask them if they have any concerns about us putting them on a map to tell people where they are. Maybe they have no concerns, but I'd like to at least know whether those groups that are running, like I said, group homes for teens, which I also have one in my area, whether they mind having to put on a map. I don't know whether Councillor McCann have any. I'm not saying just go ahead for map. I'd like to get a memo back from some of those. The staff can consult with some of those groups to say if they have any concerns with it.
Like Mayor Lehman?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Deputy Mayor, I'm failing to understand why you have an issue with this and why you think putting on a map that's designed for council, right? Indicating where the group homes are, why you have such an issue with that?
Well, why are we concerned where a group home is? Why would we be concerned, for example, where a group home for teens is located? Why should we be concerned with where that is?
Well, I think through you, Mayor Lehman.
Yep.
I just think having more information is better right now, Deputy Mayor Ward, right? I think leaving that out is kind of swimming across Lake Simcoe and getting to the halfway point and deciding, well, I'm going to swim back the way. We've already done all the heavy lifting. We've already done all the research. This would be this could be a valuable a piece of information down in the future. So I want to build this document as strong as possible, as clear as possible, and as true as possible. Transparency, isn't that the new word?
Okay. Just one other question maybe for the mover of the motion then. Certainly a lot of churches in our area offer counseling, for example, for addiction or for other things. Would those churches also that offer addiction services or counseling services be included in your map?
Well,
I'll give you an example. The Salvation Army in my ward offers addiction counseling. So that would be included on this map?
yeah, my intuition's telling me right now that, yes, I'd like to have that on the map, but this map doesn't have to be a mountain. It can be a moving document that we add services to it in the future. So do I want to have let me think here. Just give me a second. I just want to process your question if you don't mind, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Sure.
I'm guessing that if it's not a brick and mortar location that is, operating 24 hours a day, that may not be so super high on my priority list, right? And I don't think that that they would register with the city of Barrie. I mean, I'm not even sure how Ms. Miller would be able to find that resource. So to answer your question, I'm not going to die on the sword on having a mobile or having a temporary brick and mortar for addiction services.
Okay, one last question for Ms. Miller. Is there anything on this list that you wouldn't have included if this motion wasn't on the floor tonight?
Ms. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward, we have reviewed the list. It does go beyond the original request for a social service facility, but we are able to provide the information. And while I understand there's a sensitivity to the group home, and it is something that in the planning department we do, treat with sensitivity, mostly because of sort of general NIMBY comments. There is nothing that is a technical concern.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to impose the amendment. I was not terribly comfortable with the original motion, but I'm really uncomfortable with the amendment. Some of the groups that are included in there, I don't think we have to put them on a map. I think it's almost scaring people for no reason, scaring neighborhoods and saying, oh, I didn't know we had a group home in our neighborhood. And I don't think there's a reason that people should have to know if there's a group home in their neighborhood. I just don't think it's important information to know. The neighbors probably know because they usually know who your neighbors are. But I don't think it's somebody that lives a block away. I mean, had examples of NIMBYs in my own ward about people afraid of facilities opening up. And I just don't want to encourage this. So as I said, I'll support the original motion, but I won't support the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward. Any other comments on the amendment regarding the map? And unfortunately, we're experiencing the slow Zoom again. So I'll need you to indicate verbally that you'd like to speak, members of council. Anyone wish to speak?
I would, Your Worship.
Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. I just wanted to chime in because I think we're kind of losing direction on the theme and the motivation behind this amendment, and it's really to make sure that we're making fully informed and proper decisions and protecting potentially some vulnerable groups that live within the city of Barrie. And it's not like we're going to start handing out these maps to the public and stuff. I wouldn't anticipate this map's going to be posted off our website. This is a map for us to use for our purposes when and if other social services come forward, so we can make a good informed decision as to where to place these things. Because I would hate to think that we make a decision and then all of a sudden find out after the fact that one of these sensitive uses is literally just doors away or even next door. So I think that's the flavor behind this, and I think we're kind of losing a little bit of direction of the flavor of where we're trying to go with this. And it's not targeting any one individual organization or facet of society. It's all about making informed decisions, so that way we can protect the most vulnerable in our society.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harvey. Others who wish to speak?
Mayor Lehman, I have an amendment.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Hearing the discussion around the table has been great, and I really appreciate Deputy Mayor Ward's concerns, and I'm happy that he raised them. It sounds like we agree that this is useful information, so I'm going to put an amendment on the floor, and I do have a seconder, Councillor Rietma, that this map be kept confidential. So that it's for council's use only, so that we can still use it to inform our decision, but that it won't go be public, so we can sort of assuage some of those concerns that Deputy Mayor Ward brought up. So it would be to add the word confidential in front of the word map.
Okay, we have an amendment to the amendment. It's moved by Councillor Elwin, seconded by Councillor Rietma. Those who wish to speak to the amendment please indicate verbally.
Mayor Lehman, I just have a question for staff.
Go ahead.
Either maybe the clerk staff or Ms. Peters, can we do that? I don't know whether we can have a confidential matter. I just want to make sure we can before we pass this or pass.
Fair question. We will go to Ms. Cook.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Deputy Mayor Ward, it would be very difficult to keep the information on this map confidential because minus a few sensitive uses, most of the information is public and it is available on various websites. So if we were asked to provide a copy of it, we would be hard pressed to probably not provide it to a member of the public.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Ward, you still have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm really not sure now.
Councillor Elwin, you've heard from staff. Do you wish to proceed with your amendment?
Do you know what? I'm not comfortable proceeding. If it can be requested, we would have to give it. Then I will withdraw the motion, and I'm really not comfortable supporting the amendment put forward by Councillor McCann and Councillor Harvey. Then.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Elwin. We are back on the amendment as moved by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Harvey to add the list of uses. Are there others who wish to speak to it? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call a recorded vote on this one because I expect we might need it. Madam Clerk, please conduct a recorded vote on the amendment that's on the floor.
Starting with Councillor Rietma.
No.
Councillor Aylwin.
No.
Councillor Kungle.
No.
Deputy Mayor Ward.
No?
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Councillor Natalie Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes.
Councillor Jim Harris. Councillor Jim Harris.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button, yes.
And Councillor McCann.
Yes.
The amendment carries.
Sorry, Madam Clerk.
wait,
I don't
sorry,
think
is it-
you've polled one other member
Oh,
of
sorry.
council.
Got to go back to the top of my list. My apologies, Mayor Lehman. Mayor Lehman.
No.
Okay. Amendment loses because it's a tie vote.
Okay, thank you. The amendment is defeated on section E as originally requested. That is on the floor as printed. Further comments or questions on section E as printed? Councillor Kungle.
Just briefly through your worship to staff, unless it can be answered or appropriately referred to Councillor McCann. What's the intention of the map in the format that it's being provided? So I know we're talking globally about it being a tool and a resource. If it's a hard copy, I would imagine that it's kind of a point in time and it's compromised as being an ongoing resource. I know our bylaws around zoning, I believe, were changed a while back to remove any type of considerations around distance from social services. So I wasn't sure if we're looking at an interactive map that hypothetically, when a presentation or decisions are being made, that we would then be looking at information that actually frames the geography of Barrie tied to that proposed location versus a full Barrie map. And I know Councillor McCann, you mentioned downtown previously. I just wanted to clarify scope. Is this again a full city map, or if there's a priority area of geography being looked at? And then two, if this is a hard copy map, are we going to see it in layers by different agencies considering, I want to make sure we're asking for something that's going to be a tool that we can use. If it's a static paper copy, that's going to have quite a lot of content on it already from a social service legend.
Councillor McCann.
Council Kungle, thank you, Mayor Lehman. And to Council Kungle, it says in the amendment, request for a map of social services facilities in Barrie. I'm just a little perplexed right now. You just voted down more information, social services, and you voted yes last week for the general one, and now you're asking me, is it for the downtown? I'm just curious. Can you reframe your question, please?
Sure. It was just a point of clarification in the conversation you were having when you spoke to your amendment. You made reference to social services in the downtown and coming into the downtown. I didn't know if the frame, I was just checking in that it's still City of Barrie based, or if your interest was specific to the downtown, or if that was just a frame of reference.
Yeah, sorry, Council Kungle. It does say here, request for a map of social services facilities in Barrie.
Okay, and then on that, considering we're looking at a map of the whole city on all social services, my question then is through to staff about, is this an interactive map so we can actually look at the data information by neighborhood or by interest area if there is a proposed piece, so we can actually focus in on the area in Barrie? Or is this a paper map to which will be quite static and then we'll kind of date? So it'll be a tool that's only good for a point in time.
Go ahead, Councillor McCann.
I mean, I would like this as interactive as possible, but we just, this is going to have to be obviously ongoing, moving forward. I've got something in my head. I wanted to see what Andrea Miller and her team came forth with. And I would like to see this a lot more specific. So with the information we have right now, I would like to be interactive, obviously digital, right? I'm not looking for like a 3D rendering of Barrie with all the social services in it.
Okay, maybe I can step in here. Ms. Miller, I'm assuming our GIS department is going to prepare the map. I'm also assuming that further amendments over time as facilities potentially change locations can be made, and if there's a desire by council to get updated versions of the map, that can be done.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, or to you, Mayor Lehman, we've been working through a methodology to come up with the most appropriate format. We will be pulling the information from at least two online digital portals. So yes, the information could be made digital and interactive, but at this time we were proposing something static just in order to be able to consolidate the information. But I will reiterate that we are pulling the information from an interactive platform. If your desire is for it to be fully interactive, I can go back to the team and we can figure out whether or not that will be possible in the time frame that you're looking for.
Okay, Councillor Kungle, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Through you to Mayor Lehman, to Ms. Peters. I respect the information we received on the amendment, but I was just thinking, is it not legal that anything to do with youth is protected under Children's Aid Act and wouldn't be able to be public information? So back to the mover of the motion, the amendment to make it confidential, couldn't that be kept confidential because of the Children's Aid Act to protect children?
So I guess we'll go to Ms. Peters on that.
I think that the information that that Andrea Miller is proposing to put out is not information about individual youths. I mean, it is an area that we could do more research on, but initially my reaction would be that it's a property use, it's a land use matter, and wouldn't, I haven't got the statute in front of me, but would not be capable of being sheltered. To give you a more nuanced analysis of why that is, I would have to take some time to look at the legislation. I'm doubtful, given that we're talking about land and uses and information that is already available, and this is really just simplifying the availability of the format and consolidating it. So I think even if it was about youth, you would have to consider other if it was a freedom of information request, the argument would be that the information is already public in other ways, and the protection is likely lost.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I do have a question for staff. I have to admit, I did support this last week, but I have to admit I didn't think of the issue that Deputy Mayor Ward raised, and it got me thinking about specific social services that would fall under this definition that do actually make an effort to keep their facility location a secret. For example, a women's shelter. So I'm wondering, question to staff, will you be using discretion when it comes to facilities like a women's shelter in terms of what we're publishing publicly?
Ms. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Council Aylwin, that is our intention to the best of our ability.
I appreciate that. So to be clear, you wouldn't reveal the location of a facility such as a women's shelter?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear, and feel better about supporting this.
Thanks, Councillor Aylwin. Are there any other comments on the motion that's on the floor? Councillor Harris, Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Yeah, I supported this last week, and similar to Councillor Aylwin and with Councillor McCann, that information would be helpful, but I do respect and appreciate Deputy Mayor Ward's comments, and in those comments, cautions regarding the potential concerns, unintended consequences of this. So it's helpful to know that we can mitigate some of this by identifying and good examples of youth services and women and children's shelters. So those are really important places to keep anonymous. I was also, maybe a question through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor McCann. I think I was assuming one of the intentions of this was not just to identify, because I remember last week, I thought Councillor Thompson made an important point that Council was tasked with making a decision that related in part to distances between services about a year ago or so. And so this was good information to have, because that was not good theater. So that's part, so identifying some of these sensitive properties is not about anyway stigmatizing, but also identifying and then be able to protect them, I think. Is that fair, Councillor McCann?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, thank you. So in that spirit, I support the information, and if we can do it, whatever we can to protect the privacy of sensitive services, I think that's really the one concern that I think seems to be creating a little bit of doubt for people. So if we can mitigate that, I'm happy to support the original motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on section E? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question on this matter. We do have visual back, so I'll ask you to vote visually again this time. Isn't this fun? Those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your vote cards. Are any opposed to the motion on the floor? None. That carries unanimously. Thank you, members of council. Section F, please, Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section F of the General Committee Report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that section F of the General Committee Report dated September 28, 2020 be adopted. This is to refer the memo regarding the clothing textiles curbside collection program to Finance Committee tomorrow night. Any comments or questions on section F? Okay, seeing none, those in favor of section F, please indicate. Any opposed? None. That carries unanimously. Completes the general committee reports. We have one direct motion before we get to the presentation tonight. The direct motion has been put on by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Kungl. Go ahead, Councillor McCann.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Quite frankly, one of the heads of the Pickleball Association in Barrie reached out to me and asked if I would endorse them, myself, because they were going for a grant through Horizons for $25,000 to help with the pickleball transformation on Paineswood Park. And I said, well, hey, let me see.
Councillor McCann, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I need the motion.
Oh,
We need to
sorry.
start by introducing the motion. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor Lehman. It's moved by myself and seconded by Council Congo that grant application, conversion of tennis courts to pickleball courts, that the city of Barrie send correspondence indicating it supports in principle of the Barrie Pickleball Club application for Horizon Senior Grant in the amount of $25,000 for the conversion of the Paineswood tennis courts to pickleball courts, and that any conversation of the courts be subjected to City Council's consideration of a report concerning the cost and feasibility of this conversion.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. It's a direct motion. It's moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Kungle, regarding grant application for the conversion of tennis courts to pickleball courts, that the City of Barrie send correspondence, including its support in principle for the Barrie Pickleball Club's application for a Horizon Seniors Grant in an amount up to $25,000 for the conversion of the Paineswood tennis courts to pickleball courts, and that any conversion of the courts be subject to City Council's consideration of a report concerning the cost and feasibility of this conversion. Go ahead, Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So sorry, just to repeat myself again, I had a member of the Pickleball Association of Barrie reach out to me asking for my support, and I love the Pickleball Association, and I love what pickleball is doing for our city. I thought that I would bring it to council and hopefully get a unanimous council support. There is no money ask. It's just a support letter, and just for council to have a little feedback on what's going on with pickleball. I know we've been talking about pickleball for about 3 or 4 years, and it's such a growing sport. And every time, not every time, but a lot of times when I'm driving past, the pickleball courts, I just see them used all the time, and they're used in the morning, the afternoon. It's funny because sometimes I'll get on the court and they'll joke because they'll look over at the tennis courts and say, look, nobody's using the tennis courts, and these pickleball courts are full. And it's a sport that started in the States and has great momentum in the States, has moved into Canada, I'm not sure, within a decade, and it's just everywhere. Midland, Collingwood, Toronto, Newmarket, Brampton are just embracing this sport. And I'll tell you why they're embracing this sport. It's because the high schools actually teach pickleball. So you've got kids in their teens, you've got 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, you've got 40-year-olds, you've got 50-year-olds, you've got hardcore tennis players that just maybe can't, play tennis the way they'd like to play because it's so hard on the body, and they move to pickleball. So we don't just stop at 50-year-olds. We go to 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, and 90-year-olds. And I'm pleased to say that I just found out that there's a gentleman in Barrie that's 106 years old, and he's playing pickleball. So from teens to 106, this is a generation sport that is loved by many. And I am with Council Congo really going to put my sales hat on when the ask comes to convert those tennis courts, because I would love to see Barrie as a destination pickleball center. I've got really strong connections with Tennis Canada and soon to be Pickleball Canada. And these guys are giants in the sport nationally. And they actually want to come up to Barrie in the spring, and they want to co-host a tournament to put Barrie on the map. So, I will definitely be speaking with Council Congo and putting my best sales foot forward in the future. But right now, it's simply just say, hey, we support this community. We support this letter, and we wish them best of luck. And then we'll ask the money question when it comes up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McCann. Anybody wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I absolutely support this. So I don't know, maybe it was a month or so ago, Councillor Kungle and I went to play pickleball. I'd never even heard of it before, and I am not athletic. I trip over air if I'm running. It's a problem. So I was nervous. I definitely can't play tennis very well. And I loved it. And I'm telling you, if we're Canada and we all play hockey, I was the goalie because I can't run. It's so difficult for me. I have no coordination, but this was doable for me. I mean, I'm not good, but it was fun. And it was something I think anyone can participate in. And I can't wait to go back. We went on one of the hottest days. Oh my goodness. And Councillor Kungle was amazing. I learned so much and I can't wait to go back. I absolutely support this. So it's great.
Thanks, Nat.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Thompson.
I had some technical difficulty. Can we hear Mike's speech again?
And I'm afraid, no, we can't. Councillor Kungle. Deputy Mayor Ward. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of points I'd like to just speak to on this for reference because, and maybe it's to address any questions in advance, but I know the framing of it is tied to Painswick, and I am very aware that Council supported a motion to have staff come back and look at the feasibility of Painswick and the vision around those courts. So I did want to echo that while we are being asked for a letter of support in advance of seeing anything from staff, that I do want to couch that the grant is unfortunately the deadline has come up as an opportunity, but does close on October the 20th. And this group is reaching out to Barrie area MPs and MPPs, as well as our Seniors Advisory Committee and our Accessibility Advocacy Committee. And letting you know that, again, it's around the intention of supporting this around demand and really tying it to key program objectives in that grant, which looks at supporting the social participation and inclusion of seniors and providing capital assistance for new and existing community projects and programs for seniors. So happy to take any questions. If there's any hesitations about the timing of this, I believe once the grant is in, we should hear back by around March, and that group is, I believe, even this week, proceeding around other intentions around, I think, becoming a formal not-for-profit, and are progressing well around really becoming a formalized association that is looking to lead the way locally around pickleball sport and expansion, and tying this potentially even to opportunities around tourism and attraction and sanctioned tournaments.
Okay, great.
That's
Thank you.
all my comments.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kungle. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion, please indicate. Is anyone opposed? Didn't think there would be. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, Councillors Kungle and McCann, for your passion for pickleball. Geez, I can't even get the name right. Pickleball. No, it's great. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. We next have a presentation, and I will first thank our presenters for being here tonight. We have a couple of special guests who will be providing this presentation tonight and who I have had the privilege of getting to know over the past couple of years. One, Dr. Patrick Feng, and second, Dr. Adelstein Brown. By way of brief introduction, Patrick is the project manager for Healthy Barrie and will be talking to us about the activities of this partnership over the past several months and years, in fact. And Dr. Brown, I'm not sure, is Steiny still with us, Patrick? Oh, there he is. Dr. Adelstein Brown may be familiar to many of you as he's been part of the provincial news conferences recently presenting modeling around COVID-19. Dr. Brown is the Dean of the Dalla Lana School of Public Health at the University of Toronto. So we're delighted to have both of you join us tonight, and I will, with that, turn it over to Patrick to deliver the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening to all the City Councillors, staff, and members of the Barrie community. My name is Patrick Feng, and as you heard, I'm the research manager for the Healthy Barrie project, and I work closely with Dr. Brown. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk to you about the Healthy Barrie initiative, and highlight some of the work that we've done and talk about how this work can help with the city in terms of improving health and wellness with Barrie residents. So I believe you have the slides. I am going to share my screen so you can follow along. And so hopefully now you see slide 1.
Yep, we can see.
All right.
Great.
I mean, the exciting times that we are in. So, so technology is working and we're off. Healthy Barrie, as you heard, is a community partnership to improve health and wellness. Its core partners are here on the slide: the City of Barrie, of course, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, the Barrie Community Family Health Team, and the University of Toronto. And what we are trying to do is find ways for these different organizations to work collaboratively across sectors to kind of identify and work on issues of common interest. And these are typically issues that go beyond any single organization and can really benefit from collaborative work. So in a nutshell, Healthy Barrie is trying to create linkages between core organizations within Barrie, providing some support through research and evaluation. That's where the University of Toronto comes in. And the goal is to help the community really define and achieve its goals in terms of improving health and wellness. So unlike a research project where someone from the university might say, I have a great idea and here it is, do you want to do it? The spirit of this project really is to work with our community partners and really understand what it is that you are most interested in, and then find ways to support the work of the community partners. So it's very much community-based and community-run. The next slide shows a couple of the early projects that we've done. So the idea for this partnership started a few years ago, brainchild of Mayor Lehman, when he was thinking about ways to improve health in the city and address root causes. And so one of our first projects was a project called Parks RX, which is about prescribing outdoor time. Really, almost anybody can benefit from being outdoors and playing pickleball, as we just heard. So outdoor time. And so that was our first project that was led with the Family Health Team and the City of Barrie. And then we had some funding from the Ontario Trillium Foundation to do 2 projects, one on active people and another on active school travel. Both of them really trying to find ways to support and enable Barrie residents to lead healthy, active lives. And so both of those have been done with the great support of the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, and kind of takes us to where we are today. Those were the early projects, and our current project, we've been really focusing on what we call the Community Snapshot. And this is a project where we're taking the data from our core partners, from the City of Barrie and from the Family Health Team and from the Public Health Unit, bringing those together and trying to use that to really understand how health maps across the City of Barrie. As many of you know already, where you are in the city makes a big difference to your life, your quality of life, to what you have accessible to you in terms of resources and amenities. And so it's not surprising that health outcomes often vary across the geography. And so what we tried to do was to get a bit of a sense of how that worked. And so I want to really thank the work that the Community Snapshot Working Group has done over the past probably 2.5 years. We started just by bringing first the people together to talk about what sorts of indicators we might want to look at. And then we brought that data together. We designed an online tool, and I'm going to show you just a couple of snapshots on the next 3 slides to give you a flavor of it, of what we've developed, but happy to go into more detail afterwards. So, so what we did was we eventually created an online tool that maps different health indicators across the city of Barrie, and you can see what we divided the city of Barrie into 6 kind of neighborhoods that were based on a kind of geographic analysis. I won't go into all the details, but basically trying to create neighborhoods that were similar to each other in terms of their environmental and social demographics. And what we can do then is we can look at a screen that has a left side and right side and compare different sorts of indicators to try to get a sense for what might be happening in the community. Now, this slide you see in front of you has anxiety and depression on the left side and smoking behavior on the right side. And you can see there is appears to be a bit of a pattern or correlation in terms of the darker areas on the left side correlate to higher anxiety, and the darker areas on the right side to more smoking, and there appears to be some correlation there. Now, I do want to point out, this is data that we already have, so we're just drawing on existing data, and it gives us a sense of, you know, what might be interesting to investigate further. But this by itself does not prove by any means that, you know, anxiety is linked to smoking, but it can show some interesting associations that could inform planning or could inform a study or a pilot project where you say, okay, well, I wonder if we did something in one of these neighborhoods, if that would have a positive effect. So it's really great as a planning tool more than a tool to prove causation. So another example, a second example, this one looking at diabetes. So the diabetes data from the family health team and low income rate, which is available through the public health unit or through the city. And you can see there, again, is some overlap or some correlations in terms of the darker areas on the left and the darker areas on the right. It's not a perfect match, but again, it provides some ideas that there is variation across the city and that there may be some interesting patterns to look into. One more example, and I realize I'm almost at time. So this one is looking at adult obesity and healthy food options. And the point of all of these is just to give you a very quick flavor of this. We have over 35 indicators in the tool, so there's lots that we can explore. But the basic idea here is that the tool is an example of what we've been trying to do in Healthy Barrie, where we are trying to develop ways to support the work of local organizations. And so this is pulling together data that already existed, but was in different organizations. What can we learn by bringing that together? And we think tools like this can be useful for planning, for policy making, for informing the official plan, or for informing the planning of future pilot projects. And what we'd really love to do is to expand this work. So with my last slide, I'm just going to say that what we'd like to do in terms of looking ahead, we wanted to get this before City Council, to give you a sense of what we've been doing and also to ask for your support. This tool is really interesting to us, the people who have been involved, but for it to have an impact, we'd really like to roll it out to the city of Barrie, to our other partners, and start having it used within, say, the city of Barrie by city staff to see, oh, could this data help inform some of the discussions that you're having at council or in the planning department? And to then refine and improve that tool so that it is helpful to the people that's meant to support. And building on that in the future, tools like this, we'd really like to find ways to not just work by ourselves, but to link into other initiatives within Barrie, such as the Barrie Health Accord that Mayor Lehman, I believe, recently introduced, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, and to identify future projects that could have impact. And so with that, I will wrap up. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to talk more about the Healthy Barrie Initiative and to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation, Patrick. Just before I take questions from members of council, I just wanted to get you just to say a little more about the data source that we're looking at, because this is the first time some of this data has ever sort of been presented more broadly. Obviously, one of the reasons why the University of Toronto chose Barrie for this project was we have one tremendous family health team with, I believe it's about 135,000 patients on its roster, and the ability to produce and analyze this data. Obviously, when you get to community level data, even neighborhood level data, it's anonymized, so the ability to do this research is possible. But maybe, do you want to just say a bit about that data that we were just looking at, the sources of it, and how it's come to be used in this way?
Yes, absolutely. So as Mayor Lehman said, one of the great advantages of Barrie is that you have a single family health team. And so almost all the doctors within Barrie, the family doctors, are on a shared electronic medical record, which means that we can pull that data together and then use it, anonymized, of course, but to use it to understand not just the journey of individual patients, but how the community is improving in terms of health. And so that is absolutely a big advantage that Barrie has. And so the data that we have, we actually get the data from the Barrie Community Family Health Team. Each organization has its own process for approving this. So the BC FIT, the Barrie Community Family Health Team, they created a process and they had that approved by their own board about what the expectations were in terms of sharing the data and what the requirements for anonymizing it. So it's very much handled first within each organization. So the same for the City of Barrie and for the Public Health Unit. And then we bring it together and aggregate it to those 6 neighborhoods. So it's not linked to any individual, but is at an aggregate level.
Great, thank you very much. And I did see, I think at least one member of council had a question, was indicating. Councillor Natalie Harris, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much. 2 questions. What is the source of your social service list as the family health team? If you're looking to provide references, what does your list look like? I mean, with us trying to develop a map of social services in Barrie, I think that it might be helpful to kind of see what overlap or not overlap there is that exists, and maybe we can work in conjunction to, you know, provide our list to you, if that's permitted, to share social services that you might not be aware of that do exist in Barrie. So first one is, what is your social service list and where do you get that from?
Right. So thank you for the question. Currently, we do not have a separate social services list. We would be able to map them potentially if we were provided with that, but the Barrie Family Health Team, they use, in terms of social services, they have the referral patterns, but most of the data that we have is really about patients and their individual health outcomes. So I think it would be very interesting to take the social services and map on that to see how it relates and whether the needs of the community are being best served.
Yeah, I think that it might be really beneficial as well to look at the findings that you have on the maps that you just presented, and with future planning of social services, excuse me, really use the areas that are really needing that social service in relation to whatever map we're talking to. So it's kind of a great non-coincidence maybe that your presentation is tonight, and we've been kind of really trying to highlight what this map will look like for us and who will use it and how it will be worked. I think this is a great opportunity to team together and use the map in a great way and use your data as well. So thanks, it was a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship. And great to see you, Patrick, and to see your work presented to Council with Mr. Brown. I have a couple of questions. Some are thought threads, but work with me maybe because I've got some interest in where we're going with the data, and you know, recognizing that we're in a time of COVID. I was wondering if you could speak to the point in time of the data collection. So was there a particular fiscal year that you're using? In particular, I'm looking at, you know, that quick map of anxiety and depression, and wondering about next steps specifically tied as an example to that data, and if there's a baseline time period and one that will actually reflect COVID or something we can compare to, considering the uniqueness of our current state.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. So the data is pulled at different times, so it's not real-time data. And some of the data, for instance, on that slide you mentioned, the anxiety and depression data comes from the family health team. So we can ask our family health team partners to run a data analysis, and they would be able to do some. The data you see is from, I believe, last fall, so it does not reflect you know, COVID, but it's possible to do that. Other data, such as the smoking data you see, comes from Statistics Canada, which does a survey either every year or every second year. So that has more limitations, unless you wanted to actually do our own survey for more up-to-date information.
Okay, thank you. Next, I've got a couple. Can I continue? But cut
Yeah,
me
go
off
ahead.
because I don't want to compromise anyone else asking questions. You know, and so I'm wired to be looking at, okay, my Ward 3 boundaries and where are we at around that, and actually trying to discern kind of some of the rough data points tied to the population. So noting that it's really being pulled representing, I believe, 135,000 patients, it'd be interesting to see it in the future almost around what's the density across the city of those population points if it doesn't compromise the sample size. For instance, you know, although the blanket coloring in a certain area tied to one of your metrics might cover geography, I think, okay, that's representative of Ward 3, but what proportion of the 135,000 patients does it represent? So I can actually put that into some degree of appreciation. But in general, I'm not sure if you can speak to next steps with city staff, or there's anything there. I see great opportunity to look at this from a, you know, what's the interaction with the developing Barrie, Ontario Health team? Is it possible to look at metrics, and will you be informing quality improvement plans or shared indicators that talk about wellness across those agencies, and perhaps through those that have signed on to the Barrie Health Accord? Around, you know, what is that kind of target or shared deliverable that we're looking at? And in particular for me, I'm curious to see if this data, if there is a next step tied to working with city planning that's appropriate, actually can help us to inform where are our food deserts. So I know we're looking at the map tied to location of food, but I'm more curious about affordability. So I could have access to, you know, is it, you know, 15 minutes of transit or, you know, a half an hour walk, but is it really affordable? And is that the place that I'm going to go? Is it going to dictate behavior? And can it help to inform where we want to see planning or development of affordable access to food or different pathways? And can we acknowledge, you know, how do we build healthy, connected communities around bike lanes and different routes that actually connect us to some of these social services?
Sure.
So it's kind of a huge thought thread. Yeah, but more around, you know, actually looking at how do we take this and inform planning, particularly around access to services.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll do my best to answer briefly. First, we've had some great conversations with Andrea Miller and her colleagues early on and throughout. One of the things that we do think that this would be useful for is for planning. Part of this is that the tool that you see in the pictures in the slides, this first phase was in part a kind of proof of principle type of exercise where we wanted to take to show that it could be done and to show the value of it. I absolutely agree that as specific needs and questions get identified, we may want to take more focused metrics. We decided for the proof of principle stage that we would just take existing data. But there may be data that you want to zero in on that would require some data collection. That's possible. It's just not something we did right now. But I think the spirit of it is certainly to inform planning and as a community-based project, the ultimate goal is to have impact in the community. It's not to create, something that kind of looks nice and then, sits on a shelf somewhere. And we want to be feeding into the work that is going on within the city of Barrie. And so we definitely want it to be useful for planning.
Brilliant. And last question, on those 3 initiatives, the parks, prescription, active people, active school travel, are they still ongoing initiatives? And if so, I'm interested to see if there's any data that's possible in the future about, can we even identify when physicians are making referrals to prescribe parks, where are they referring to? So is this a patient population in a particular neighborhood? And how does it help to drive a reimagining of public space? And would primary care actually be a key stakeholder that we need to rethink about around actually saying this is what would make parks or support patients to actually adopt parks? And maybe there's a feedback survey within that linkage that can help inform our actually planning development of green spaces.
So the projects that I put up on the early project slide have completed, but certainly we could revisit them. I think the best way is I'd be happy to go into further detail with you about each of the projects that we've done and the lessons that we've learned and how they might be brought back in a second iteration to address the needs that you identified.
Great,
So,
thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, Councillor Congo, and it's probably an appropriate point for me to mention. Part of the reason this data is so powerful is because of the multiple different ways that it can be used by all 4 project partners. I mean, keep in mind we've got the health unit, the U of T from a research perspective, the city in terms of our services, and the family health team. So in terms of addressing chronic conditions, obviously there are implications for all kinds of implications for medical services. But for us, I mean, you think about recreation department, what programs we offer where, what programs we offer in what parks, in terms of transportation and safety, the police, in terms of walking to school and active transportation, in terms of social services, everything that the county does. This is powerful information. And then urban planning and so forth. So I think, but what it all funnels back to, which is what's brand new with this partnership and what U of T brought us and the family health team brought us in this partnership, was the ability to actually look at the entire city of Barrie's, a huge proportion of the population, almost all of it, and identify what the health situations were and the patterns within that data. And what the map doesn't show is that, as you look at this over time, we can look at which conditions are increasing in prevalence or decreasing in prevalence, which correlations are increasing in prevalence and decreasing in prevalence. So there's a lot that can be done with the data, but it starts with the ability to look at that data. And that wasn't even possible 3 or 4 years ago, let alone whether it was shared among us for all these different purposes. Councillor Claire Riepma. Councillor Riepma, I have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Patrick, I really like your presentation, and I really like your maps because I think they're really very visual and very helpful. you've given us 6 or 7 of them. Do you have more up your sleeve? And I'm just thinking about, you know, it'd be great to have a map such as this that maps, for example, age or heart disease or, you know, drug use or, you know, EMS calls. Or, like, there's so many other things that would be, first of all, very interesting, but also I think very helpful for us to understand how our city functions. Do you have more information? Or do you have more maps? And how do you see producing these maps? Because I've got a whole wish list for you.
Yes, and talk to my agent. So the first answer is yes, we do have more maps. We have about over 30 indicators that we pulled together. So among those, some of the ones that you mentioned, we do have heart disease, we have age, obviously, life expectancy. We have some like EMS calls. So, you know, just depending on what you want to look at, and you know, some of them will be more useful than others, but we can definitely create those maps and see if there are any patterns. So I just gave you a little sample of what's possible. And then your second question is, you know, if you have a whole wish list, I think that's, I'd be happy to go into more detail about the indicators and to show what's possible. And then really, I think it's a matter of prioritizing, you know, among council or among other interested groups, what they are most interested in looking at, and we can produce those maps for sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Rittman. Councillor Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Patrick, for the presentation. If I missed it, I apologize, but I'll ask the question just in case. I noticed on the age ranges, you had 19 plus and you have 40 plus. You also, the one map that interested me was the anxiety depression scale. So given that Barrie is a family community, certainly in healthcare, obviously too often works downstream, not upstream, wondering what work has been done or plans to be done to look at children and youth.
That's a great question. We do have one of our working group members is Dr. Matt Narava, who is a family physician. Some of you may know him, and he is interested in that question in particular. And so he's been looking at the data from the lens of child health and childhood obesity and other types of metrics. It is certainly possible. The ones that I pulled happen to be, you know, for adults, but there is some data. There's certainly data from the family health team that pertains to children, and then some of the data that we have from Statistics Canada, because they're collected by Statistics Canada. It really depends on how they collected it, but certainly, I agree with you. Looking upstream and thinking about how to address health proactively is a great strategy and something that this tool should be able to help with.
Yeah, and thank you. I recognize too that of the 3 projects that have been completed, I would expect that definitely the school one related to children and youth, and I'm sure the parks one did largely as well. So I'm sure that I realize the work is being done, but I just think it's really important as we look at healthcare planning that we do as much as we can to prevent as opposed to treat illnesses. On that end, just maybe as a comment, I know Councillor has a wish list as well, but given COVID, and one of the things that happened to COVID for healthcare has been virtual care has become more the norm, but also recognizing that what's emerging in literature and research is the impact of screen time on the health, particularly anxiety and depression of young people. So if that's one of your lenses, I'll throw it out there that maybe a study on the impact of screen time, how much screen time and anxiety depression rates would be of interest because we know that's an emerging problem for our youth. So thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
It's a heck of an idea, Councillor Harris. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions of Mr. Fang? Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. It was actually a bit of an eye-opener, to be quite honest with you. The one chart that causes me some concern is the very last one there, to do with the healthy food sources, because we see some significant areas throughout our city that are showing 0. Now, I know these obviously aren't your data points. It's obviously federal data that you're extracting, but in reading about the Modified Retail Food Environment Index, it speaks about a 1,000 meter perimeter. So I'm just kind of curious, maybe to explain to myself and other members of council, with a radius of 1,000 meters, I would have expected the data points to be very, have a curve to it, opposed to very blocky square sections to it. So just wondering if you can explain how you came up with this particular map in more of a square fashion opposed to a curved data set, which is what I would have visually expected to have seen.
Right. So you are, sorry, I think I'm going to be photobombed by my child.
Bring him in for sure. This is honestly one of the best things about COVID right now, is we get to meet people's kids in the middle of Zoom calls. It is the best. Anyway, okay, next time.
Mom got him, so okay. So to answer your question, Councilor, right, so it's not our data set, but I can tell you why it looks blockish. So it is, you're correct that they take it within a certain distance, but they also map it to essentially what we call dissemination areas, or like parcels of predefined geographies, right? So you can think of like a postal code, for instance, mapping to a particular block. And so you can see on the map, like, why they're not all square, they're not all the same size. They map onto predefined geographies. And so they take an average of given, using the distance, they calculate the average for the points within that particular neighborhood, but then they create one number for that whole neighborhood. And so it's just an artifact of how that particular indicator is calculated and mapped, as opposed to anything that we've done. We've taken what they have and then mapped it onto Barrie, but the geographies are already predefined for that particular indicator. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'll leave it as it is. Obviously, you've done a lot of research on this. I just think by blocking it instead of keeping a curved radius, it kind of tends to skew the data in some areas. But other than that, it is a very good eye opener to see some of these areas that we literally have no healthy food sources according to this index.
Right, and some of that may also be, outdated or old data. So certainly it would be worth, if again, this as thinking of this as a conversation starter, if that then is something that is of great interest to council, we could go and look into more detail and perhaps even supplement the data that is there with some data collection, looking at the stores in Barrie to provide a more nuanced look at Barrie's food options.
Okay, thanks. And just actually, Councillor Harvey picked up on something that I think is really interesting in this, because so as an example of how the data can guide what we do, I think members of council are familiar with Care Table, which is the pop-up produce. Take some if you need it, leave some if you've got it. It's the contributions that people have been making, especially this fall, from community gardens and other sources in terms of fresh produce that people can come and can take if they need it. Some of those Care Table locations can be informed by this data. So, here's an opportunity to both try and get fresh produce out to people who, according to the information, have less access to it. So when we're up on Coulter, there's an area that actually is lighter on the map. So, I mean, that's a very, very basic and simple kind of use of the data in terms of the food desert problem. But the other much more detailed information is, okay, yeah, it correlates on the map, which is interesting. It suggests there might be a relationship, but is that really the source of the relationship, or is there something else going on? Is it income? Is it nutrition information? Is it transportation related? Is that why people aren't going and getting healthy food because it's too expensive or too remote or otherwise? So that's the sort of next level data. But I think one of the reasons we wanted Healthy Barrie to come and show you not just the sort of quick projects that were already done, but the much broader mapping exercises, so that as members of council, we're all aware that this resource exists, and we can, and I would be delighted, to be frank, and I think I speak for the other partners here, Dr. Gardner and the family health team leadership and U of T, we'd be very pleased if members of council had areas of interest that they would like us to delve into in terms of how we can use this data to better target what we do as a municipality. Are there any other questions for Patrick? If not, I will just ask if Dr. Brown, or if you're still on the call, I wanted to sort of give you the last word, because much as Patrick was very kind to call this my brainchild, it really wasn't. It was one that Dr. Brown came to me with and was interested in Barrie, and then perhaps I championed it. But I think the original impetus for why Barrie, why would U of T want to do this with Barrie, and what is the value going forward that we see in this partnership? I know Dr. Brown has had a real passionate interest in this and setting this up over the years, so I wanted to give him the final word. Steiny?
Yeah, thank you very much. Look, the reason that we wanted to do this in Barrie is the fact that this has been, I think, your longest item on your agenda so far tonight. It's a community where you've got a rather elegant health system structure with really one family health team. You've got one hospital. You've got a very dynamic public health unit. And you've got engaged decision makers who, rather than sort of looking at us oddly when this data gets presented, are asking for more and more data and looking for more finely grained data. And that's kind of what makes this exciting for us. We're really trying to find places in Canada where we can work on building a learning health system that uses data at all levels and tries to feed it back. And so today, I think kind of feels like it's a payoff for the bet that we put when we started putting some resources into this. So thank you. And thanks, Patrick.
Thanks for that, Dr. Brown. With that, I will thank you both for your work, of course, and partnership over the last few years, and for being here tonight to present this. And we'll let Patrick get back to a kid who's obviously very interested in seeing his dad. So thank you both for being here tonight and for the presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Much.
Okay, with that, members of council, it brings us to inquiries of staff. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff?
I have none.
Members of council, any inquiries? Councillor Jim Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through you, I think to Miss Cook, I believe, in relation to the, or maybe it's Miss James Reed, maybe it's both of you, I'm not sure, but you'll hopefully figure it out. With the suspension of the 7 to 9 parking restriction in the Allendale area, if you can give me a little bit of a sense, I know we've talked about it with staff, but it's for residents who are watching and kind of next steps. How soon and in what method will that be implemented? If that's fair to ask at this point.
Ms. Cook, I think I will go to you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Jim Harris. Thank you for the question. Now that we have the council's blessing on this, notices will be sent to the area residents advising them about the lifting of those parking restrictions. The signs will remain in place, but our staff will be still enforcing in the area, but only for emergency purposes.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ms. Cook.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any other inquiries of staff? Okay, seeing none. Announcements. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any announcements tonight?
I have none.
Okay, members of council. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. First of all, I just wanted to thank all of council. I just got a reply from the Pickleball Association in Barrie, and they're very grateful. So thank you very much all for that. And the second announcement that I have is the Rotary Club of Barrie asked me to promote what they have going on for Halloween. Obviously, it's COVID-19, and there's a lot of changes to what we're going to be doing for Halloween. And I've asked Wendy Cook to circulate the brochure, and it's basically a contest. Oh, there you go, perfect. It's a contest that everybody can join in. I got some great sponsors giving away prizes with Napoleon and the Garden Gallery, Bradford Greenhouses, and basically put this in a nutshell. It's decorate your house for the biggest prize, decorate your door for the second biggest prize, and decorate a pumpkin for the third prize. And it's about getting this community together. This is going to be a sustainable contest that we want to have for years to come. And Rotary does such great work. And this is going to be on our events calendar of the city of Barrie. And I just want to say a shout out to Katie James, who's put a lot of work into this project. And if anybody has any questions, they can go to facebook.com, Barrie Rotary Halloween. And they're looking for donations, but more importantly, this year, it's more of a branding exercise. We just want to make this contest sustainable. Thank you, Mayor Lehman.
Thanks, Councillor McCann. Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I have an announcement about a neighborhood meeting for a new development at 217 Dunlop Street East. That's right on the waterfront. So this neighborhood meeting is taking place on October 22nd. That's a Thursday, October 22nd at 5 p.m. and it's a virtual meeting. So members of the public can go to my website at keenan.ca and click the link to register for the October 22nd neighborhood meeting for the development at 217 Dunlop Street East. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Aylwin. Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got a couple of announcements and they're really thank yous and some acknowledgements I'd like to share. And first off, I wanted to make a note, considering we're now in October and September was the closing off of the work and efforts by our park ambassadors. And I know there was a piece of this on our circulation list a while back, but I did want to take a note because I think I'd like to echo a sincere thank you to those 6 park ambassadors who really stepped up and did some difficult and challenging conversations that were quite remarkable around their contributions, especially around our waterfront areas, around supporting residents and visitors to take appropriate precautions. And I'm aware that that was a key role around some of our COVID precautions and safety response, but in particular, an acknowledgement that our enforcement services, Service Barrie and the health and safety branch of staff was a great ongoing guidance to ever-changing conditions around COVID. And so I wanted to take a point just to really send a virtual high five to those 6 park ambassadors for great work and really stepping into some difficult situations on behalf of the city of Barrie. And I believe that I'm hearing only compliments about your professionalism and your conduct. The other one was, I might gap it. So for some residents that have been connected with me, we were trying to plan with a Living Green, an Osprey Ridge cleanup, tree planting and distance mulching. That was booked for October. We're going to revise the letter that's been held to go to residents, and we're going to defer that to April. And so more information will be coming out about that piece. And I think, are you speaking, Mary Lehman, to transit operators?
Not sure what specifically you are referring to.
Okay. Unless I'm mistaken, I think there's some acknowledgement and appreciation on October the 7th happening with transit operators. It's not the typical time of year we do it, but I think for anyone out and about on the bus or off the bus, just send a high five and a wave to our transit operators for the work that they do around making also adjustments during COVID and supporting safe and accessible transit. And that's
Thanks for that,
everything.
Councillor Kungle. A little while ago, I sent a video to our operators to say thank you for their work during COVID. It has been a very difficult, stressful time to be an essential services worker all across the many different services that people deliver in direct contact with the public. And our transit operators do an incredible job on that front, both adapting to the requirements of COVID, but dealing with just the everyday job, which is a very difficult job to do. So thank you for that. Any other announcements, members of council? Okay, seeing none. A few proclamations. October 5th, 2020 is World Habitat Day, and we had a distanced flag raising for Habitat for Humanity at City Hall this morning. I would like to proclaim the week of October 4th to the 10th as Fire Prevention Week, and as you know, our fire prevention branch is our award-winning Barrie Fire and Emergency Service Fire Prevention Branch. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions, we will be doing this in a different way this year. Most of it will be virtual on BFES's social media accounts, also, which is facebook.com/Barrie Fire Service and Barrie Fire on Twitter. The theme this year is serving up fire safety in the kitchen. Learn about some simple but important actions you can take to keep your family safe from fire in the kitchen. Also, we have teams to encourage everyone to test their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. That's part of the TVO Kids Push 2 Buttons campaign, and that is an online contest you can enter at tvokids.com to enter the number of alarms you've tested in the interactive counter. There is more information on the website at barrie.ca. And I did want to acknowledge Carrie Clark, who's on the call tonight, of our own Barrie Fire Department, for all the tremendous work that the branch does, especially during this very important week where we have the opportunity, as we should all the time, but particularly now, to spread that safety message, that fire prevention message. Johnson's Beach will be closed starting today until late November. And this is actual construction to take place, and credit to Councillor Riepma for being part of these the plans to do this. The revised, or the work that's going on there, will actually grow the usable area of the beach. As many people will remember, when there were some modifications made to the stormwater outlet at Johnson's Beach, the usable beach area was shrunk due to the work that was done there. And there is some further work that can be done to actually grow the beach area. So that will be happening, as well as adding some safety pieces. And there's information on the website about that at barrie.ca/beaches. Public review and comment period for the draft official plan is open until December 22nd. Please make sure you provide us your comments and get involved in the planning the future of Barrie. You can do that at buildingbarrie.ca/official plan. As part of our economic recovery plan, the city has collaborated with the Downtown Barrie BIA to bring Culture Days programming to open air Dunlop. We've had 2 of those Saturdays and have a few more to go until the end of October. The pedestrianization of Dunlop Street. We invite everyone to participate and show appreciation for the arts and culture in our communities and nationwide. Much of the programming is online, but there are downtown merchants participating and outdoor activities that have been planned with COVID in mind by the Downtown BIA. Visit barrie.ca/culture days for information on that. We are seeking to appoint citizens to the Anti-Racism Task Force. We will be taking applications for the task force until Monday, October 19th, 2 more weeks. You can contact my office for information about that. That's 792-7900 or office of the mayor at barrie.ca. We are also seeking nominations right now for the 2020 Heritage Awards. That is until October 13th. Now, this is where we recognize property owners and individuals and organizations who've made strides in fostering and protecting our heritage, our local identity through heritage preservation and awareness. There are nominations in the following categories: residential buildings, commercial, institutional buildings, or an individual or group of people who stand out in terms of their heritage contribution to the community. With that, I will move to the bylaws. Deputy Mayor Ward.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bills 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, and 91.
Okay, it is moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bills, and these bills be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, and 91. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor of the bylaws, please indicate. Any opposed? None? Carries. Deputy Mayor Ward, confirmation bylaw, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 92.
Thank you. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Ward, seconded by Councillor Thompson, that leave be granted to introduce the following bill, and this bill be read a first, second, and third time this day and finally passed. Bill 92, confirmation bylaw. Comments or questions? Seeing none, those in favor? Are any opposed? None. That carries. Just before we adjourn, a note, both for those watching and of course members of council, we do have a scheduled meeting of Finance Committee tomorrow night. There are a number of items on that agenda which are no doubt of general interest to all members of council and to the public. So members of council, if you are not a voting member of Finance Committee, you can certainly attend and ask questions and participate, and would encourage you to do that. We have a couple of matters tomorrow night that I think are of broad interest. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jim Harris, seconded by Councillor Rob Thompson. All those in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.